Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the path to liberty. This is the Fast Friday edition of the show for February 11th, 2022. And on this episode, I'm again talking about mass warrantless surveillance, but this time in the context of gun control. And I'm sure you won't be surprised to learn that so-called relief or stimulus funds from the last 2 years of lockdowns, well, they're being used to purchase the technology to do just that. But first of all, before getting to that, my name is Michael Bolden. We broadcast live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time from here in my home office and studio in downtown Los Angeles for the 10th Amendment Center. Our show homepage has everything you need to follow this show. All the archives, all the platforms, video, audio-only podcast edition, individual episodes. You can find links to stuff that I'm talking about, references, so you can read and learn more in context on your own time. And of course, our membership program where you can put your financial faith behind our work for as little as $2 a month, and we make it go a long, long way in support of the Constitution and liberty. That show homepage is 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. It's all spelled out, 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. And I couldn't be more grateful for you spending some of your time with me today. Thank you so much for being here. Whether this is your first episode or you've been here for every single one since day one, I can't thank you enough. But since it's Fast Friday, let's see if I can get this info out to you in the next 10 to 15 minutes so I don't take up too much of your time. And let's get right to it. I want to start out with what we're talking about. That's acoustic gunshot detection technology. And here from Electronic Frontier Foundation, which of course is reporting on it from an aspect of being surveillance rather than gun control, but that's really what they do. So let's add a little bit to the mix here. They say acoustic gunshot detection is a system designed to detect, record, and locate the sound of gunfire and alert law enforcement. The equipment usually takes the form of sensitive microphones and sensors, some of which must always be listening for the sound of gunshots, always, 24/7. They are often accompanied by cameras. They are usually mounted on streetlights or other elevated structures, though some mobile and fixed systems operate in both indoor and outdoor settings. Think about this. The notion that every shot fired should be tracked and monitored and reported to law enforcement is inherently a gun control program. I think we all know that mass surveillance of what people have to say, what they send by text, what they do on social media, things like that, mass surveillance programs create a chilling effect on free speech. And one doesn't have to make too big of a leap to understand that mass surveillance of using a firearm can create a chilling effect on that as well. And unless, of course, they want everyone who owns a firearm just to have it for show or for collector's reasons. And that's probably one of the big things that the gun grabbers really love. Anyways, back to EFF. They say, we now know that gunshot detection systems can also hear and record human voices. And police have used these recordings as evidence in court. As is so often the case with police surveillance technology, a device initially deployed for a less intrusive purpose, here to report the sound and location of gunshots to police, I don't know if that's less intrusive, is now being used for a far more intrusive purpose, like to spy on people having conversations within the vicinity of these sensitive microphones. There's a really interesting report in NBC News, of all places, that was covering this. I guess it was, just yesterday, written by two people. One of them is a guy named Jonathan Shupe, and I've actually talked to him about Second Amendment sanctuaries in the past, and I think he actually did a very good job of actually covering this issue. Surprisingly, over at NBC News, this is a really good report. He points out here, a publicly traded company based in Newark, California, ShotSpotter, is the main company that sells this technology. There are others. They have contracts to provide gunfire finding devices by subscription to about 120 American police agencies, which pay $65,000 to $90,000 a year for each square mile of service. ShotSpotter is the country's best-known maker of gunshot detection technology and dominates the market. Going further, back to NBC News, they say in an examination of ShotSpotter's business activities, and this is where it starts to get a little juicy here, it already is, how it attracts new clients while fending off calls for police to drop the technology, NBC News found that the company exerts influence at both ends of the federal money pipeline. This is a tool that is being primarily funded by federal dollars that are generally unconstitutionally stolen from people and then unconstitutionally divvied out through so-called federal grant programs. They lobby, back to NBC, they lobby Congress and federal agencies for grants and other spending programs that can be used to pay for its products, while also shepherding local police departments through the process to obtain that money. Going further, they report that for a relatively small investment in lobbying, companies like this can reap much more in contracts subsidized by federal grants. So the idea of having a mass warrantless surveillance program, always monitoring either audio or video or cameras or both, somehow combination. Generally, it is a combination of the two. And then reporting every gunshot to law enforcement. And we found in many situations, in some reports, like in Houston, they immediately just turn it over to the ATF, which shouldn't exist in the first place either. So many police agencies, back to NBC News, in turn, lobby the federal government for more funding of technology. ShotSpotter's activities offer a window into this process. They may be one of the best at doing this type of work. They say the use of federal grants. ShotSpotter is fighting to retain customers and draw in new ones by steering federal grants to police departments. So they look at all these federal programs. Some of them are law enforcement grants, and some of them, as we'll see in a moment, are other things like stimulus funding or housing funding, things like that somehow end up being mass surveillance gun control funding as well. The reporting is based on publicly available information about ShotSpotter, including corporate filings, marketing materials and lobbying records, as well as hundreds of pages of contracts, grant applications, emails, and other documents obtained through public records requests by NBC News. Or you could literally just go to shotspotter.com, and they've got a section on their website, which I have pulled up here on the screen, called Funding. And they say, if you want to bring ShotSpotter into your community, please don't let the funding issue be a stumbling block. It's a lot of money, 65, 70, 90K per square mile per year. A lot of local communities, especially the smaller ones, tend to balk at that unless somebody else is paying for it. The federal grants, they write, we help you access, can typically only be used for community enhancement and require no local matching funds. So it's just free cash. We can also, and there's never anything so expensive as a free government program, we know. They say we can also tackle funding for multi-year projects. So they're basically saying, you know what, we've got this product. We're going to help you find a way to get this product, get the license for it, and we'll figure out how you don't have to pay for it. Contact us today to review your funding options. Our team will help you select and apply for the programs that are the best fit for your community. And they give a whole list of things. ShotSpotter helps you access the following funding sources. Of course, on the bottom, there's things like community public safety partners. But there's also asset forfeiture funds. Here's how they put it. These funds from seized properties that are sold at auction to the private sector. These proceeds can be used for law enforcement purposes, excluding hiring personnel. ShotSpotter qualifies as an appropriate use. In most situations, especially civil, in every situation of civil asset forfeiture rather than criminal, and most of it is civil, this is stealing. This is taking stuff without a conviction, and then they use it to buy stuff to convict more people. It's really a horrible circle of criminality on the hands of government. They also use federal competitive grants and formula funds, and there's a whole section on this. So the DOJ Homeland Security Grant. There's, of course, I'm sure the Edward Byrne, the JAG grant. These are like law enforcement, usually drug war or terrorism grants, gun control grants, things like that. But there's also the HUD, Public Housing and Urban Development Public Housing Capital Fund, the HUD Community Development Block Grant, the FEMA Urban Area Security Initiative, the Smart Policing Initiative Grant Program, and on and on. And there's so many of these grant programs. But it's not just these. They didn't mention these other ones that maybe they posted on their social media here in May of 2020, early on into the shutdown time. They said the deadline for CARES Act funding, this is on the ShotSpotter Facebook page. The deadline for CARES Act funding for law enforcement is tomorrow, May 28, 2020. Additional funding is still available for police departments to protect their communities amid this health crisis, we'll call it. ShotSpotter's grant funding experts are on standby to help you meet the deadline. They were using this bailout cash, tell everybody to stay home, lock everybody down, and then we'll start funneling, printing tons of money, funneling around, and then they're using it for mass warrantless surveillance and gun control. What a surprise. Here, I've got some examples. I want to go through a few examples and then we can wrap this up. This is just an introduction to this, and I hope it encourages you to read and learn more about this and oppose its implementation in your community. Here's some examples. Like in Detroit, they've already had it, and then the Dugan administration from Bridge Detroit wants to use $7 million in American Rescue Plan Act. That's also bailout stimulus funding from 2021 for the controversial gunshot detection system, ShotSpotter. They already have it. They had a 4-year plan. Now they want to expand it with another $7 million in Detroit. In Memphis, they want to use $650,000 in federal funding grants to purchase ShotSpotter technology. In Memphis, oh wait, was that Memphis? This one's Memphis, I think. No, Winston-Salem. There's Memphis. There's all kinds of places around the country. Buffalo, Cleveland, Houston, Grand Rapids, all over the place. $700,000 in a federal grant goes to Winston-Salem. In Syracuse, the Syracuse Common Council today, this was September 27th of 2021, they agreed to spend more than $725,000 in federal stimulus money to expand a gunfire detection program, buy updated tasers, and train police in de-escalation strategies. Maybe they should train police to stop enforcing unconstitutional acts, but I don't think that'll ever happen. New Haven, the city spends $12 million from the Federal American Rescue Plan Act to install 500 new video surveillance cameras, expand the ShotSpotter electronic gunshot warning system, and fund several other public safety uses. $12 million in New Haven. And then in Newark, New Jersey, they've had this one on the books for a long time. In 2017, they report current Mayor Ras Baraka used a federal grant, I believe it was $700,000, to install more of the gunshot detecting devices on rooftops and light poles. In a separate grant application the previous year, 2016, Newark said it wanted to expand ShotSpotter across the entire city. And we know that if we're talking about $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 per square mile, this is going to be a ton of money. And then even in Little Green Bay, Wisconsin, they're currently having a debate about this. This was a publication just February 7th of this year. The city is debating whether to spend $655,000 in federal money for sensors that alert police about gunfire. People are questioning. There is some pushback in a small town like that, or much smaller town. But and they report, while the initial $500,000 investment would be paid for through the American Rescue Plan Act funding, because that's going to be rescuing people out of all these shutdowns, means adding more surveillance cameras, giving more warrantless surveillance tools to the police from the federal government, or letting them buy it, basically, and then using it for more gun control, gunshot detection. The city's taxpayers in Green Bay would be responsible for yearly operating costs. According to the most conservative estimates, it would cost up to $71,000 a year per square mile. Short version, at the end of the day, with federal funding always comes with federal involvement, federal strings, federal partnerships, and federal priorities, from mass warrantless surveillance to the drug war to gun control and everything in between. This is all unconstitutional. We should all be aware of it. We should all be opposing it. And I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope it was educational. I hope you learned something more than anything. Of course, if you support the work we're doing, you support us getting this information out to more and more people every single day. You can put your financial faith behind our work with our membership program for as little as $2 a month over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. You can also help us spread the word by smashing the like button, leaving comments, reviews on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast platform. All that stuff will help trigger the algorithm. All my puns are intended today. That will help trigger the algorithm of the platforms, especially the mainstream ones, and tell them to show us to more people. I really appreciate your help in spreading the word. I hope you guys found this interesting. This is not positive news. It should be something that makes your skin crawl like it does mine, or something at least pisses you off a little bit. But I hope it was educational. I hope you have a great weekend. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you next week here on the path to liberty.